All right, welcome back to the deep dive. If you're here, you're probably the kind of person who likes to get right to the heart of things.
Absolutely, cut through all the noise. And today, we're really diving deep into something I think is fascinating. How music is used strategically, intentionally, in missions, work across the world.
And sometimes we think of music as this purely personal preference thing.
Right, just what I like, what you like, what moves us emotionally.
But this deep dive, we're going way beyond that.
Yeah, way beyond just appreciating music for enjoyment.
And for this, we're looking at some excerpts from 034 Strategies for Music in Missions.
That's right, it's a document from Living Word AMI Missions.
And it takes a really strategic look at how music can be a tool, not just like a nice to have.
Exactly, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty of why music is so powerful for spreading a message.
Building communities, too.
Across cultures, which is huge in missions.
So our mission in this deep dive, I guess you could say, is to understand why this document sees music as this incredible tool for missions.
Yeah, it's not just for worship, which is important, but for actually actively sharing a message, connecting with people.
So we're going way beyond casual music appreciation here.
This is about understanding music at a deeper level, its functions, how it works.
And how to apply that strategically.
And honestly, it's relevant even outside of missions, just for understanding how music influences us.
Okay, so the first thing that jumps out from this document is the foundational purpose. Why use music in missions at all?
Well, right off the bat, they ground this in theology.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
So the purpose of music in missions reflects, God's desire for worship.
God wanting people to worship him.
Exactly. And it aligns with the church's mission, right?
Yeah.
Sharing the gospel, making disciples.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So the ultimate goal with music as a tool is to lead people into authentic worship.
To bring them closer to God.
And ultimately to glorify God.
They include this great John Piper quote.
Oh, yeah, I love this one.
It says, "Worship, therefore, is the fuel and goal in missions."
It's what drives it and where it's headed.
And then he goes on, "The goal of missions is the gladness of the peoples in the greatness of God."
So powerful. Music is part of how we experience that gladness.
Yeah, it evokes emotion, it brings people together.
And the document really emphasizes that point. Music isn't the end goal in itself.
It's a means to an end.
A really effective means, but still a tool to facilitate worship.
And to accomplish the bigger purpose.
And a key point here, they're not advocating for any one style of music being superior.
Right, it's not about saying this genre is better than that one.
The focus should always be on pointing people towards God.
Not getting caught up in musical preferences.
Absolutely. It's about the message resonating, not just the melody.
So if music serves this big purpose, the next logical question is, why is it such a powerful tool?
Why is it so effective? What's going on there?
The document gets into that, breaking down the inherent qualities of music.
And the first one they point to is music's social function, how it works within societies.
And they start with this huge point. Music is universal.
It really is. Every single culture we know of has some form of music.
Even if it's drastically different.
Even if the styles are totally different, the function's still there.
That means it can connect with people on a really fundamental level.
Regardless of language, background, whatever.
The document also talks about how music just naturally grabs our attention.
It pulls us in. Think about a bell ringing.
Yeah, a trumpet call. Those things cut through everything.
Throughout history, those sounds meant something.
Calling people to attention.
Signaling an event? Maybe demanding silence?
It's like an ancient form of communication.
And they give the example of the shofar from the Old Testament.
Oh, right, that ram's horn trumpet.
It wasn't just a random noise, it had specific purposes.
Announcements, sacrifices, festivals, even the Jubilee year.
It's fascinating. And we still see this today.
Oh, yeah, in so many ways.
Think about sporting events, music, highlighting key moments.
Building excitement. Or those advertising jingles.
Oh, those are designed to get stuck in your head.
And they do make you remember a product.
It's all about using sound strategically to convey something specific.
Capture your attention and make you feel something.
But it goes even further than that, right?
Oh, yeah, it's not just about grabbing your attention.
The source talks about how music can unify thoughts, feelings, actions.
It brings people together, creates a sense of community.
Which is so powerful, especially in missions.
And the example they use is brilliant. Moses and Miriam after the Exodus.
That moment of liberation. They lead the Israelites in song.
It wasn't just listening. It was everyone singing together.
Instruments, dancing, all these elements combined.
This incredible outpouring of emotion, shared purpose.
It cemented that moment in their history.
But then the text throws in a really important reminder.
Oh yeah, this is key.
This unifying power, it's not inherently good.
It can be used for negative purposes too.
They mention Hitler's rallies. Music was used to manipulate.
To stir up intense emotions, unify people around a horrific ideology.
Chilling, but a crucial point. Music acts as an amplifier.
And amplification in itself isn't moral or immoral.
It depends on the message, the intention behind it.
But the underlying power to bring people together, whether for good or evil, is undeniable.
And the Old Testament gives some more examples of this unifying power used for good.
Right, like the trumpets at Jericho and Joshua.
Knock down those walls.
And King Jehoshaphat using a singing chorus to lead his army into battle.
That's wild.
2 Chronicles. And as they sang, the Lord intervened.
So this idea of music, unity, and even divine action is woven in.
And it's not always so dramatic.
Right, everyday life too.
The document reminds us music is in social events, rites of passage.
Births, weddings, funerals, it marks those moments.
Exactly. They even quote a scholar, Pass, who says there's a universal association of music and ritual in all cultures.
That connection is deep-seated. It's part of being human.
And they go on to point out music can identify a specific group.
Like, you think about Christian music.
It sets believers apart, creates a sense of shared identity.
But it can also be used, as Hunt points out, to replace non-Christian practices, which is relevant for missions.
Huge in missions. You provide new forms of expression rooted in faith.
So when you combine all this, the power to attract, unify, build community, it's clear why music is potent in missions.
It really is. It taps into something very fundamental in us.
Okay, so we've got this social power of music.
But the document dives deeper into its didactic function.
Didactic, meaning how it teaches and educates. This is where it gets interesting.
Right. Music is a tool for learning. They point to Ephesians 5.9, where Paul talks about teaching and encouraging one another with psalms, hymns, spiritual songs.
That's good foundation right there.
The idea of music carrying knowledge.
And we all know how much easier it is to remember things set to music.
The alphabet song. Try forgetting that one.
Or learning state capitals with the song. It just works.
The melody becomes a framework for the information.
Makes it stick. And repetition, that's key too.
Oh yeah, singing something over and over. But the text says it imprints them in our memory and thought patterns.
It becomes part of you.
But it's not just rote memorization. The document says when you connect a song to a specific experience, an emotional one, it goes deeper.
Like you hear that song and it brings back those feelings.
And any learning that happened then, the music adds value to it.
It's more than just facts. It's tied to something real.
It makes learning so much more holistic.
Engaging different senses.
You're hearing, seeing the lyrics if you're reading along, maybe moving to the music.
It's a full-body experience.
And the source connects this to how our brains work.
This is where it gets cool.
Music is mainly processed on the right side of the brain,
while speech is more on the left side.
So when we use music for learning, we're potentially activating more of the whole brain.
Using both the logical and the creative.
Which can lead to faster learning and better memory.
And they tie this back to Christ's greatest commandment, loving God with heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Music engages the whole person in expressing and learning about faith.
It's not just head knowledge, it's a whole being thing.
And it's not just memorizing verses either. Music has always been a way to teach Christian doctrine.
Going way back.
Think of the Psalms, the Hebrew hymnal, but also a source of deep theological understanding.
It's poetry, song, and theology all wrapped up together.
In Martin Luther's hymns during the Reformation, they were tools to reinforce key teachings.
Making those ideas accessible to everyone.
And they have this powerful quote: "The basic beliefs of most Christians have been formulated more by the hymns they sing than by the preaching they hear or the Bible study they pursue."
Wow. That really makes you think about how much music shapes our understanding of faith.
It's incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
And beyond the social and teaching aspects, the source explores a therapeutic, almost mystical function of music.
Okay, now we're getting into the duck stuff.
This is where we see how music affects us on a subconscious level.
Like how it impacts our bodies and minds.
Exactly. It influences our physiology and psychology. Things like our pulse rate, blood pressure, even our breathing.
Music can calm us down, get us pumped up. It's powerful.
The document mentions how music has been used to alleviate both physical and emotional suffering.
They bring up the classic example of David playing the harp for King Saul.
To soothe his troubled spirit, music is a balm,
And it's not just a nice story. Music therapy is a real thing today.
Using music to address all sorts of physical and mental health needs.
And the source points out how crucial it is for missionaries to understand the role of music in healing within the culture they're working in.
Right, because those views can be very different.
There's this long historical connection between music and religious experience across cultures.
Whether it's preparing for rituals, prompting emotional states, recounting sacred stories.
It sets the tone, creates the atmosphere.
The story of Elisha requesting harp music before prophesying shows this connection too.
So music is so much more than just entertainment.
It's part of worship, nurturing faith, evangelism.
It gives us a way to express and connect with those deep, often unspoken aspects of faith.
It gives voice to the heart. But recognizing these functions is just the first step.
Then the source dives into this really critical area for missions: musical contextualization.
Because while music is universal, musical language isn't.
Right. What might sound joyful in one culture could be completely different in another.
The meanings we attach to musical sounds are shaped by our culture.
So you can't just assume that everyone will understand or appreciate the same style.
The document explains this distinction between denotative information and connotative information in music.
Okay, break that down for me.
Denotative is the literal meaning of the lyrics.
What the words are actually saying.
But then you have connotative information, the emotions, the feelings the music itself conveys.
So the music adds another layer of meaning.
And those two levels need to be compatible.
Otherwise, the message gets muddled.
Or even completely misinterpreted.
And the source gives this really interesting example from Indonesia.
Yeah, Christians in Manado, Sulawesi, they intentionally don't mix religious and secular music.
To avoid diluting the sacredness of their faith.
That's a really powerful example of being sensitive to cultural context.
It's about respecting those boundaries.
And the document emphasizes that missionaries need to really understand the musical style of the culture they're working in.
Like not just the surface level, but the deeper structure.
The vocabulary, grammar, syntax, just like learning a spoken language.
It's about becoming musically fluent in that culture.
And they propose a goal for missionary musicians to be bimusical and bicultural.
Fluent in the musical language and the broader cultural context.
So you can truly connect with people through music.
Then the source points out this historical pitfall in missions.
Oh yeah, this is important.
Missionaries used to just translate Western hymns into other languages.
And introduce them wholesale into other cultures.
The problem is, those musical styles often sounded strange and unappealing.
And potentially hindered the gospel message they were trying to share.
They actually say the spread of the gospel may have been impeded by this.
That's a strong statement. It shows how important this issue is.
So what's the alternative?
The source emphasizes that the most effective musical language is often the first or heart language.
The music people grew up with that's deeply tied to their emotions and identity.
It resonates on a different level.
And while urban centers might be more open to various styles, that core music is usually the strongest connection.
It's the music of their soul.
And as a church grows and interacts with different cultures, their musical landscape naturally expands.
But the source cautions that in pioneer areas, new church plants, or communities blending traditional beliefs with Christianity, there might be less tolerance for diverse musical styles at first.
People might be more attached to what they know.
And here's where they bring in T.W. Hunt's principles for using indigenous music.
So how to approach music in a culturally sensitive way?
These principles highlight the importance of appreciating a culture's music as a communication tool.
Second only to spoken language.
And the need to distinguish between biblical standards and cultural norms.
What's universal truth and what's just a cultural preference?
They also emphasize retaining what is good and valuable in a culture while discarding anything harmful or evil.
So it's not about rejecting everything, but being discerning.
And trusting the Holy Spirit to guide you in those gray areas where the right path isn't obvious.
Sounds like a wise approach.
But the document also includes Berglund's perspective, suggesting music reflecting an unchanged life without Christ might not be appropriate.
So there's a need for discernment, careful consideration.
It's not a simple black and white issue.
And the text stresses that applying these guidelines requires both the Holy Spirit and the judgment of mature terminal Christians.
People who understand the culture deeply.
Missionaries, especially early on, should rely on their wisdom.
And the best long-term strategy is to train national Christians to make their own biblically informed decisions about music.
Empowering the local church.
So they own their expressions of worship, not just adopt the missionaries' preferences.
So we've talked about the power of music and the importance of context. Now, how do we actually use music effectively? What strategies does the document outline?
They get into general principles and then specific strategies for both evangelism and worship within the church.
Let's start with the overarching principles. What are the big ideas they emphasize?
The first principle is that all music used in missions should aim to glorify God.
That's the foundation. It's not about personal preferences or entertainment.
The second is being receptor-oriented.
Meaning?
Understanding your target audience deeply, their musical traditions and preferences, and adapting your approach to fit their frame of reference.
So it's not about what we like, but what will resonate with them.
Precisely.
The third principle is about discipling national Christians.
Teaching them biblical principles related to music in the church, encouraging their musical gifts, helping them create and share their own music.
Empowering them to express their faith through music.
Exactly.
And the fourth is to defer judgment on musical styles to mature national Christians.
Letting them take ownership of the music ministry.
So it's not about imposing outside preferences.
Right. It's about empowering local leadership.
Okay, those are the guiding principles. Now let's get into the specific strategies. Starting with evangelism, how can music be used to share the gospel?
They cover a lot of ground here. One strategy is feature evangelism.
What's that?
Things like concerts, recitals, musical marches, pageants.
Events that use music as a draw?
To attract people who might be resistant to traditional preaching.
So music becomes a bridge.
They give examples like Bill O'Brien's music event in Indonesia that led to many conversions.
Wow, that's impactful.
And the work of Bill Graham and Dolly Howell in Zambia, their music evangelism team saw hundreds make decisions for Christ.
Music can be a powerful tool for sharing the gospel.
Another strategy is open-air presentations in public spaces.
Streets, parks, marketplaces.
The author shares his own experience using a guitar and pump organ in Brazil, drawing a crowd instantly.
Meeting people where they are.
This works well in cultures where public life is vibrant.
Making the most of those natural gathering places.
Then there's using music at community events like fairs and expositions.
Integrating into existing structures.
They mention John Conrad's use of handbell choirs in South Korea.
That's creative.
It catches people's attention, creates opportunities for conversation.
It's about finding those points of connection.
They also advocate for choir-based evangelism and church planting.
Using music to build community and reach new people.
They give the example of Marlene Lee in Rwanda. Choirs from established churches would travel to villages and perform.
And often new choirs would form in those villages,
leading to conversions and new church plants.
It's amazing how music can spark that kind of growth.
Then there's program-based evangelism within churches.
Using existing music programs for outreach.
Things like graded choir ministries involving all age groups can be a point of connection for non-believers.
Reaching out to families, regular attendees.
Then they talk about church-based schools of music or fine arts.
Meeting a practical need while creating opportunities for evangelism.
Through teaching, relationships, performances.
It's a long-term investment in the community.
And finally, they discuss using radio, television, and recordings.
Reaching a wider audience.
Acknowledging the costs, but highlighting the potential impact.
Technology can amplify the message.
Is a powerful tool in the right hands.
Okay, that's a lot of ground covered in terms of evangelism. Now, what about music in worship and discipleship within the church?
They stress the importance of developing congregational singing.
Getting everyone involved.
And they encourage national believers to write their own songs in their own cultural idioms from the very beginning.
Not relying solely on translations.
Especially in new church plants or those communities blending Christianity with traditional beliefs.
It's about fostering authentic expressions of faith.
Missionaries can guide, but the creative work should be in the hands of local believers.
Empowering them to lead.
They suggest starting with scripture songs and then moving to paraphrases and versifications to aid memorization and doctrinal understanding.
Connecting music with biblical truth.
They also advocate for forming choirs and instrumental groups.
Enhancing worship, providing training, encouraging participation, and church music education is key.
An ongoing process of training leaders who can train others.
Equipping the church to use music effectively.
This can involve workshops, clinics, even formal training in Bible colleges and seminaries.
So it's a multi-level approach.
And they suggest considering church music education by extension to reach more people quickly.
Making the most of resources.
They also highlight the importance of training pastors in basic music skills.
Because they're often the primary leaders in new churches.
Equipping them musically can have a huge impact.
All right, we've talked about purpose, function, strategies.
What about the future of music in missions?
What does the document say about that?
They point to the historical growth of music missionaries.
It's been a significant part of missions for decades.
But they acknowledge a recent decline in some denominations.
So there's a need for renewed commitment.
They advocate for sending agencies to continue supporting music ministry.
Recognizing its effectiveness.
They also stress the importance of educational support.
Preparing missionaries to use music well.
They recommend integrating music in missions training into all missionary programs,
So everyone has a foundational understanding.
including topics like ethnomusicology and cross-cultural communication,
And specialized training for music missionaries.
to equip them for the unique challenges they face.
They also suggest including music missionaries as standard members of church planting teams.
Recognizing their valuable skills and contributions.
And they emphasize the need to develop indigenous church music among unreached people groups,
Music missionaries with ethnomusicology expertise can play a vital role here.
helping those communities express their faith through music.
And finally, they encourage greater use of volunteers in music missions.
Expanding the reach and impact.
It's about mobilizing more people to use their musical gifts for God's glory.
So they envision a vibrant future for music in missions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a vital tool for sharing the gospel and building the church.
And as we wrap up, it's clear that music is so much more than just entertainment.
It's a powerful tool for communication, connection, and transformation.
The source really emphasizes how music is not just about aesthetic appreciation, but a scripturally ordained and historically proven tool for evangelism, discipleship, and worship.
It's not just a nice to have, it's an essential part of the mission.
And often, its potential is underutilized.
People focus on the worship aspect, which is important, but there's so much more to it.
The source highlights music's ability to attract, unify, teach, heal, and bridge cultural divides.
It's a powerful complement to other forms of communication.
It speaks to us on multiple levels: emotional, physical, social, spiritual.
It really does. It's a unique and powerful gift.
So as we end this deep dive, I'm left thinking about the broader implications of music.
Not just in missions, but in our everyday lives.
How can we use music to connect with others, to bridge divides, to make a difference?
What's the heart music that can speak to the people around us?
That's a great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.